Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sayyidina, how are you?
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. How are you, Habibi? I'm good.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you for joining us today. So today's topic is going to be one that people struggle with in a way, not just Muslims but non-Muslims alike, and that is how to find a spouse and what is the most optimal way of finding a spouse in the modern age.
You said it better than anyone could. Muslims, non-Muslims, there's always a hope that one day they will find that special someone. And many people find that individual, but through incorrect means or through ways that is not optimal, not beneficial, not healthy. In this 21st century, there are good ways, wrong ways. Islamically speaking, there are ways that are not embraced as much as they should be potentially or even possibly in the West. So for example, many people set aside marriage, whereas Islam focuses and emphasizes on getting married as among your greatest of priorities. So a lot of people will push their marriage at the end after they've secured a job or they've completed their school and so forth. And the data shows that as time moves on, marriage and the age for marriage also gets delayed and postponed. This in of itself has a lot of ramifications. There is a loss of that learning curve that is missed. And this learning curve is one that helps people get to know one another better in a more healthy way. So in that early 20s time period, that segment, that moment is a very optimal moment to get to learn one another because you're still getting to know yourself. And so when a person involves a special significant other in that process, they can see their significant other grow with them. That development is very healthy as opposed to already having your life settled, because it's not a shared experience anymore. You're settled. There's nothing else you set off to accomplish. And a person has already established a relationship with you, you don't see this development in them. That development is super necessary because it shows a development of trust. That I saw you, for example, when you were at your financial low or when you were struggling. Many people, they get married and they move suddenly and they just don't know how to get their life settled. Those complications end up being blessings later on because I saw you at your lowest low and now look where we are. That helps generate a lot of trust in many couples. So part of the new age process in spouse selection is the delaying of finding a spouse. It has its ramifications. Islam counters that by saying, look, if your life is settled or not settled, so long as you're responsible, so long as you meet certain criteria of mental responsibility, you are able to be someone that can cater and provide, then you should consider finding a spouse. Now, the problem is, how does one go about finding a spouse? Your intentions could be clean, clear. You want someone that can get you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's all good and said and done. But how exactly is it done? So today, many people will look for where can I maximize socialization, because clearly if I want to get to know people, I have to socialize more. One way people do that is by going to their bars, local bars, buying a drink for someone they don't know. Honestly, I think that's pretty creepy. Or going to a setting where they can see many people mix and mingle. The idea, honestly, is not a bad idea because you want to maximize the amount of people you can see, but sometimes it can be done very awkwardly. So, for example, many people will develop friendships to then determine whether or not this person is spouse suitable. And I'm sure you know a lot about that. They're going to develop a relationship, and then when they see that this person is not fit for marriage, what happens to that relationship? What, do they just continue, or can they stay as friends? This goes back to the whole topic of, can men and women just simply be friends? And so there's that complication. One of the best ways to approach this whole idea on spouse selection is to find a medium. Find someone you know and trust. And if you can actually find a few of them, that's even better. You know, it's like passive income. You have multiple sources of income. You could be sleeping while you are still making money without you actually working or doing anything. You have a business that you've invested in, it's working for you. Someone you know and trust, whether it's someone in the community that's very influential, they obviously need to be a believer because they need to look out for your interest. At the same time, you don't want them to go and share information about you like they're sharing on a billboard, an advertising, marketing campaign. That this person is single, who wants them? No, that you want them to be clever and creative at the same, to preserve your integrity and dignity. I remember there was a person that asked me, hey, so-and-so asked me to find them a wife. Do you happen to know anyone for them? And I'm like, I don't know who so-and-so is. Can you tell me more about them? And they just began to reveal everything. They're like this, but they have this flaw. They used to be this, but now they're that. Even if I knew someone, I was thrown off because I'm like, well, that's not the most suitable way. If you're going to speak for someone, I think they call them wingmen, right?
Yeah.
You want to be a wingman for somebody. You want to support them at the same time, but you should also keep in mind that there is a huge burden and responsibility. You're ultimately going to have someone paired with an individual for life, so you need to be transparent at the same time. But you want this person to preserve your good name. So find someone you know and trust. One of the best people, if you're a girl, for example, is your brother. Or if you're a guy, is your sister. Why? Because, well, obviously, if the girl's interested in a man to get married to, then she can have her own brother who she can be open with, talk with comfortably. There are really very minimal to no barriers between her and her brother. And that guy could even possibly become his friend. Because even at the end of a marriage, you want, at the end of the process in the marriage, you want that this spouse can become a friend to the family as well. What a good relationship is the relationship that has the family already in good ties before they became linked through a familial manner, through marriage. So if, for example, a young man is interested in a particular girl, like he heard information that, hey, this person is potentially available for marriage, he can observe. So there's nothing haram in observing. Social media, for example, if content is made available online, done in a manner that is modest, of course, from both the men and the women, then there's nothing wrong with observing. There's actually nothing wrong with that. Then he asks and inquires to his sister, and if he doesn't have a sister, for example, the mother, an aunt, a this or that, someone that you can be very open and comfortable with. Hey, could you maybe approach this person? Sometimes people have the wrong approach, like the one I described earlier. Hey, this person is married. Do you want to get married to them? It's not going to work. It's not going to work at all. Or the most awkward one is when they say, hey, they want to marry you. What do you think? It's like, okay, no. In Iraq, they do it like that, by the way. Maybe in Iraq, it's perhaps normalized. The culture is that way. It's like, hey, they want to marry you. And it's a lot easier to accomplish that. But here, you got to be honest with yourself, man. We live in a world where these things can rub off very awkward and uncomfortably. Okay, they're interested to get married with me. I don't even know them. Why are they interested? It's kind of creepy. So let them befriend that individual. And naturally, through that friendship, you will become more exposed to them. They'll become more aware of you. And you could even pose and ask the question. Many people see this as arranged marriages. And in that context, there's nothing wrong with that. As opposed to the arranged marriages that we hear about in the world, especially from third world countries, where you don't have any choice. That not only is wrong on many levels, it's also haram. Why is it haram? Then why would arranged marriage be haram? Because many people associate Muslims with arranged marriages. And you know this. Many people think, oh, she was forced to get married. And you think, okay, which demographic has arranged marriage as something that's very normalized? People automatically assume Muslims. That might be true. That sadly could be true, but doesn't make it right. Because in this religion, there is no compulsion. La ikraha fi din, which is ayah 256 in chapter 2 of Baqarah. There is no compulsion in this religion. You can't compel this person to marry another person, especially if it's a matter that concerns them. It's marriage. They're getting married, not you. You can't force them to get married. Many families will stress You have to marry that person. Whether you like it or not, if you really want me to be happy, marry that individual. That's super common.
Yeah.
So a person suddenly finds themselves in this situation where they're between a rock and a hard place, and they don't want to disappoint their family. At the same time, it's not an attractive goal. It's like, I don't know the person that well. I don't even like them that well. But I don't want to be the reason my family just hates me suddenly. And so they become more inclined to accept. That relationship doesn't work out because it wasn't done through transparency, through genuine love, through seeking nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as marriage is truly one of those biggest blessings Allah has blessed mankind with, the completion of half your deen. I remember there was a time where someone had asked their father, let's not say who, I'm interested to get married, just to see what they would react, how they would respond. And so the dad said, why? This person said, well, isn't marriage completing half your religion? Ikmal nus ad-din, nusf ad-din. He's like, yeah. He's like, I want to complete half my religion. So the dad was like, Baba, do you even have a religion to complete half of it? Go pray. So if the union began through compulsion like this, it's not going to happen. Don't be surprised that it ends sour, it ends in divorce. There should be transparency, there should be love, there should be all these things. You're not going to marry someone without loving them. What kind of marriage is that? You just married a stranger suddenly. Or someone you know, but you have no affection for. Love someone for what they stand for, their principles. You also could have your preferences. And a lot of people, they always put the preferences aside and say, well, it's not a condition, so it doesn't need to be something I should take into consideration. You should definitely take in preferences into consideration. What I mean by that is if you could make a union that can satisfy both you, that's the priority, and your family, then go for that. Go for that. I mean, you want your mom and dad's blessings. So a preference they might have. We want you to marry someone that is from our culture. If you're an Iraqi, Lebanese, Lebanese, if you're white, American, from that culture, why? What makes life convenient for the rest of us? At least on a culinary level, we eat the same food, we can still speak the same language, etc., ethnicity, all these things. It makes life easier. If they have that preference, it's not a condition, that's true. And you could even shun that. But always try to mitigate the amount of complications. Because the last thing you want is that this union you created, you're so happy and proud of, that you have a mother-in-law that hates you, that you have your father that says, I told you not to marry that person. Of course, they shouldn't make their preferences conditions. I know many marriages that are completely different races, like a black and white marriage, but they're wonderful. They work out. They're both mu'mineen. They love Allah. They work towards Allah. Or a convert marries a born Muslim. The family might have a preference, and I say there's nothing wrong with them having preferences. Why is it wrong that they have a preference that their child that they raised for 20-something odd years, blood, sweat, and tears, they have every right to have their, I want them to be from this. But they can't make it a condition, because in Islam there are only two conditions for marriage. That their deen has to be something that is impressive, and their akhlaq and mannerism. You can have akhlaq, but your deen is trash. Okay, this person is not going to care about halal food for your kids later on, or salah, or anything like that. But their akhlaq is good. No, who cares? They could have deen, but they have the akhlaq of like a tyrant. No, that doesn't work. I mean, your salah is almost not even accepted at that point. Your khuluq, your akhlaq, and your deen. These are the conditions. Anything else is preference. Even age. Now, common sense also has a role here too. We're not advocating for let's say an age difference of 80 years. It can happen if you're talking technically speaking, but common sense plays a role. This is where preferences come in as well. So there are many ways to accomplish this, but one of the most optimal, the best ways to do it is to seek out a medium. Say, okay, I don't have a sister that can just go talk to this other girl. And you want them to become friends before we become married? I mean, yeah, if it's possible. If it's not possible, look out for influential people. Figures in your community that you know, you trust. Go to your masajid. Talk to the scholars there. Alhamdulillah, in America, you have a masjid, one that has followers of Ahlul Bayt as well. Every single state, even in Alaska, by the way, there are Husseini centers, Ahlul Bayt centers, lovers of Ahlul Bayt. Go to the alim, the speaker there, speaker, scholar, the influential figure there, and say to them, I am interested. So we're talking about how to find a spouse. This is literally the practical, pragmatic way to do so. I am interested in getting married. I know you would look out for my best interest. Inshallah, they would. And if you happen to know someone, please let me know. Now, suddenly, here the fiqh rules begin to change. Where ghiba became haram, now became halal. Not just halal, it became mustahab. It's encouraged. You let them know everything. Because you're about to landlock an individual where they're linked and they're chained and they don't know that they have this flaw or this vice or this whatever. Some people will not share their insecurities. Like you might sit with this individual in a public gathering, which is halal to do, by the way, for the intention of marriage. And they're not going to tell you that they were in a relationship recently that went sour. They're just too insecure to share that with you. But they will share that with their best friend. That's why we said, for example, have your sibling or whoever else become friends with them.
A medium. Yeah.
A medium, ahsant. So they can be more comfortable. That person, they have a religious duty and obligation to them tell you, hey, look, they're wonderful, but if it bothers you, I'm going to let you know. If it doesn't bother you, doesn't matter. But they have this history. They're addicted to this. They're doing that. They're blah, blah, blah. They might have a really bizarre tattoo. I don't even know. These things they probably won't share to you. There might be insecurities. You have every right to know. You should know these things, especially if they concern health as well. They have this as a common problem in their family, for example, let's say. Or they're currently undergoing a certain treatment. But they won't feel too comfortable sharing that with you. You have every right to learn these things. That's technically not backbiting. It's just clear transparency before you link yourself with an individual. So speak to someone who is influential. Say, for example, I don't have a sibling. I don't have an aunt or a parent that can do that for me. I don't even have the resources to approach my scholar or whatever. Online is actually a very wonderful tool. You could use that to not necessarily talk to the person of interest, but to still talk to someone that's influential online. Now, you can't bring that excuse anymore. No, I don't have access to an influential person online either. You do. Everyone does. Reach out to them, send them messages. Like, Assalamu alaikum, Shaykhna, Sayyidina, Maulana, whatever. Sister, someone you know and trust. Someone that you don't necessarily know, but you can trust because clearly look at them. These are people that have a history serving the communities. I am interested in marriage, etc. If you happen to know someone, let me know. These people, the nature of their lives is that they socialize with people, especially speakers, scholars, people that get invited because they meet so many people. Alhamdulillah, I've had the honor to travel to a number of cities in America, and I notice a common denominator is this. It's risen. It's brought to my attention that if you happen to know someone, I live in an area, we have, you and I, we have the Dearborn privilege. We live here, we got resources, we got people, we got halal food, we got masajid, we got alhamdulillah many wonderful, beautiful scholars. We have those resources, but to some places, to some people, for example, I've traveled to Connecticut. I've been to Vancouver. I've been to a place called Nantucket, New York, little island. And we have some Muslims there. These guys, some of these people, they're like, I have never seen another Muslim girl except the few in this area, and I'm not cut out for them. Or I feel like I'm not interested in them. Like, you as someone that's, your nature, your career calls for meeting people, speaking to many people. You do, though. So they can manage to get something worked up. Hey, I know someone that's potentially available, a sister, a guy. You might not have direct access to them online. Many of these guys have Facebooks. Many of these guys have Instagrams. There are literally no more excuses, and they will look into this. In my minimal experience, I've had tens of people bring this to my attention. I can only imagine, mashallah, our wonderful ulama and speakers that have been on the job for like 20 plus years. They probably still have marriage requests from 15 years ago from that poor sister, that poor guy that's still pending and loading, right? They may have probably forgotten, but if you bring it to their attention, like, I do actually know someone. This is actually very practical. It works. It's halal, it's discreet, it saves and safeguards your good name and dignity. You're not putting a billboard out there suddenly. The last way it can be done, but there are a lot of pitfalls, is direct communication. You have to be very tolerant of knowing that it might not end well. But even direct communication, someone that you know you're interested in, even that requires a medium. Even that, to be successful. What? It's not that a guy can just go up to a girl and be like, hey, give me your number, let's talk. Super awkward. Then what's the alternative? Well, let's just become friends first. Yeah, but becoming friends might lead to a lot of trouble later on. Because, okay, you're friends. Suddenly you discover something. I don't like this. But we're still kind of friends now. Okay, but then you're not going to get married suddenly because you're friends with this guy. Or you are still friends with a girl. And then what is your future spouse going to be appreciative of that? That you're still on a friendship with a sister that you intended on getting married to first. It didn't work out. But now you're landlocked in this friendship. Because you're like, okay, I can't be friends with you because we can't get married. You can be nice and kind and polite and respectful. And if you can communicate in that manner, that's fine. I'm not going to give a few examples as to what that looks like. But it could be one where theoretically a person sees a professional, working individual, brother or sister, and approaches them and says to them that they, of all people, are individuals that are impressive in their mannerism, in their akhlaq, and that religiously speaking, through the parameters Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed in communicating, they would seek to get to know them more. That only means with an interest of marriage. It's hard to say it like that, by the way. That's why we're saying use a medium. Hey, I'm interested to get to know you more through the parameters Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed us. That's not going to work. But you have to be blunt as to what you want too. Like, what are you talking about? That's kind of odd. So in that situation, it makes sense. Talk to them directly. But even that, it'll be healthier to have a medium. I know some of the memes out there are like, hey, when he asks you for your dad's number, you know you're good. Or when you and her are in the masjid and the khutbah's over, and so you start stacking more than usual chairs just to show off your guns in front of the girl in a halal way. Yeah. Or when you finish your salat and you go to shake hands with the guy next to you, you turn around a bit more just to look at the glance right behind you to see that girl, if she's sitting, she's looking at you. Or you go and sit next to her dad in salah, for example. Some of these, honestly, these methods, I've heard of ways that these were successful. Like in salah, this guy, he purposely sits next to that old man because he's interested in his granddaughter. The old guy becomes friends with him. He really likes him. And he keeps thinking, I have a granddaughter that might... Honestly, hey, if it's quirky, it's weird, it might be successful, it could work. But you can still notice that there's a medium involved. Always have someone involved. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easier for you, inshallah. And the Quran describes it beautifully. هُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ. They are a form of dress for you. وَأَنْتُمْ لِبَاسٌ لَهُنْ. And you are a form of dress for them. Because you want someone that's going to protect you, like you're dressed in clothes does, from the elements, from forces, to safeguard your chastity, your modesty, your everything about you. Your wife, your spouse, your husband should act like that. Basically, getting you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Ahsan Sayyidina, you have given us a lot of great, useful information. And inshallah, you get a lot of people married out there who are looking
I'm going to
well.
be looking at who you'll sit next to during prayer from now on, just to see if there's like an old guy.
To find a medium. See, I'm already taking notes from your lecture.
Mental notes, habibi.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate everything. And like I said, inshallah, you will get people married from this useful podcast.
Inshallah ta'ala, many people can find their significant other through halal means and complete their faith. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah.